Alright, before I start this video, I'm going to start with a little disclaimer saying sorry for the noise. There's a fish tank behind me, which I had a little bit of drama with earlier trying to turn it off, so I'm not going to do that again. And my cat doesn't know the definition of shut up. So, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's begin. I'm making this video in response to Azneyes' video about Santa Claus. This video will be basically a little tutorial explaining my experiences with the deck and a few pointers for anyone who wants to build it, including Azneyes himself if he really wants to. This is a deck of passion for me. I built this deck a few years back when my friends were all playing meta stuff like Drag Unities and Dark Worlds. I was like, screw that, I want to build something really random and stupid, and I saw Stephen Kramel's Remove Brainwashing Gravekeeper deck, which he built, and I decided I kind of wanted to replicate that. I've been playing with this deck a lot. I've been through a lot of different builds, but there are two builds that I've kind of settled on. This one that you're seeing here is pretty much straight Remove Brainwashing, which is just stall and beat your opponents down with the Remove Brainwashing monsters. But I've also got another build, which is the actual build I have in real life, which I'll show you a little bit later, and it's a bit of an alternate spin on the deck. So before we start, I'll jump into this deck in particular and explain the strategy and engine of the deck. Remove Brainwashing revolves around giving your opponent massive monsters like Grinder Golem, Lava Golem, Santa Claus, I guess now, Volcanic Queen, and then taking them back with either Owner Seal or Remove Brainwashing. Since you are the original owner of the card, you take them back, and you get to beat them into the ground with monsters, but you also are tributing off their monsters to summon massive monsters to your side of the field. So it's a great deck, which means you can pummel your opponent into the ground and clear off their field at the same time without having to deal with their monsters' effects. As Azneyes stated, it's a great way to get rid of things like Quasar or Venomanaga, because those cards can protect themselves from cards that are on the field or being activated. Since things like Lava Golem, Grinder Golem, Volcanic Queen, it's all summoning criteria, Quasar and Venomanaga cannot stop them. They are off the field before these monsters even hit the field, so there is literally not much you can do in response except Bottomless or Solemn Warning or Solemn Judgment, but regardless, your monsters are gone before your opponent gets the opportunity to activate those things, so they still lose a monster. And if they decide to Bottomless like a Volcanic Queen or a Lava Golem after you've done it, they're essentially going -2 while you're only going -1, so I mean, it's never a good situation for them. The strengths of this deck are that you can quite easily OTK. This deck can OTK incredibly easily because you're clearing off your opponent's field. If you have a Lava Golem and a Volcanic Queen, you contribute off 3 of their monsters and pull back 5,500 attack to your side of the field. So that means like you can clear entire fields and pull out massive monsters and then attack them directly with these massive monsters. But the one downfall of this deck is because it's entirely reliant on having Owner Seal, Remove Brainwashing, and a good mix of the monsters, there is a tendency for it to have incredibly dead hands as well. So, the heart of the engine itself is 3 Grinder Golems, 3 Lava Golems, now 3 Santa Claus, I guess, 3 Volcanic Queens, 3 Owner Seals, and 3 Remove Brainwashings. Everything else is just either fillers or stall or draw power. And as you can see what I've got here, it's all exactly that. I've got 3 Battle Faders for stall, I've got 3 Swift Scarecrows for stall, and I have got a 1-day piece for stall. For draw power, I've got 3 Card-Cardees, 3 Max Cs, 3 Pot of Dualities, and 3 Trade-ins. Now you may be wondering why 3 Trade-ins, given that there's only 6 targets. It's just an additional insurance that you get to the draw power. These ones in the middle here are Nightmare Archfiends. They are actually more part of the Remove Brainwashing engine because this card is almost entirely useless without Remove Brainwashing. But it's a good option. What it does is you tribute 1 monster on your side of the field and your opponent gets 3 Nightmare Archfiend tokens, which are 2,000 Dark Fiend beaters. Basically, they get them in attack mode. This can set up for some crazy combos with this deck because you can, for example, if you've just made a play, you've got Remove Brainwashing face up on the field. If you've just taken back Volcanic Queen from them and they have no monsters left on the field, you attack them directly for 2,500 damage. They think, okay, that's fine. But then still during the battle phase, you can activate Nightmare Archfiends, tribute off your Volcanic Queen, give them 3 tokens, which immediately come back because of Remove Brainwashing, and then you can attack them for 3 sets of 2,000 for essentially an OTK. It's a lot easier to set up. That's also another reason why Battle Fader is in here, because Battle Fader can be used with Nightmare Archfiends in a pinch. You can drop a Battle Fader after a direct attack, and then on your turn, flip Nightmare Archfiends and Remove Brainwashing, and you have 3 2,000 beaters. They do have a little bit of a caveat of you take 800 damage when they're destroyed, but I mean, if you're getting 3 2,000 attack beaters, losing 2,400 life points when they die isn't too much of an issue. So that's the main standard build that I've got. The way I've incorporated Santa Claus is taking the normal engine of the deck. I've included Santa Claus like you normally would, But because of Volcanic Queen being a 6-star as well, that means that you can also pull out some 6-star Exceeds fairly easily, because you've got 6-star targets, which means that you've got more than enough fodder for at least 1 or 2 of the 6-star Exceeds at any point if you choose so. With cards like Volcanic Queen in particular, since she has a burn damage downside, it can be good if you manage to pull 2 of her back to your side of the field, attack your opponent for 2,500, and then overlay it into something like Gauntlet Launcher or Photon Strike Bouncer, just to ensure that your opponent won't activate any more effects. Of course, you could also be a little bit of a pain and go attack for 2,500, attack for 2,500, use this one's effect to send a card to the graveyard for 1,000 damage, use this one's effect to send a card to the graveyard for 1,000 damage, that's 7,000 damage total, overlay it into Photon Strike Bounds, and then if your opponent tries to activate any monster effect, you do an extra 1,000 damage to them and finish them for game. Like 2 Volcanic Queens and into Photon Strike Bounds with that combo is almost a sealed fate game. But there's just one potential combo for the game. The One Day of Peace is in there because, as well as being draw power, and like I said, this deck is notorious for having really bad hands really early and really easily, is it can protect you for 1 turn, which can help you set up, but it can also do things. For example, if you have 3 Volcanic Queens out on the field, like, that's a bit of a weird analogy, but if you have 3 Volcanic Queens and choose not to use any of their effects or something, just for example, since she has the effect where you have to tribute a monster or take 1,000 damage, at the end of your turn you would take 3,000 damage unless you tributed off other monsters. Assuming you wanted to keep all 3, you can attack for 3 of them for 2,500 each, which would be 7,500 all up, and then drop a One Day of Peace at the end of the turn, which means that you no longer will take the 1,000 damage that she would otherwise do to you, because One Day of Peace negates all damage. So you can attack them and then be really cheeky and play One Day of Peace, and that means even if they clear your field, they can't do any damage to you next turn, which is also a bit of a fun combo. The Pot of Dualities are in there because it's additional search power, and you may be thinking this is a deck that relies heavily on special summoning, so why would you do that? If you, like I said, you need a really good balance between the monsters and the engine of the deck, which is the 3 spell cards or the 3 trap cards. If you have all monsters, or if you have all spells or all traps, this deck is almost entirely useless. Remove Brainwashing and Owner's Seal do nothing unless you've got Volcanic Queen, Lava Golem, Grinder Golem. It's entirely useless. So the Pot of Duality means that you can set up, it might not help you in the particular turn that you use it, but it can help you set up for the next turn. And if it really comes down to a pinch, more often than not, you have a tendency to Pot of Duality into either Swift Scarecrow or Battle Fader, which will protect you for 1 extra turn. So yeah, this is the basic build of the deck. This build works pretty good. If you want to try this deck out, I would recommend this build. This is a very standard build. You're not getting into any advanced gameplay mechanics. But if I do have a pointer, try and keep the rules on hand. Try to keep them open in another tab, especially for Remove Brainwashing and Owner's Seal, and maybe Lava Golem and Grinder Golem. Because this deck, since it's not a strategy that people come up against quite often, people don't know how the rulings regarding changing owners work, and it has a tendency to cause a lot of conflicts, and you have people getting really angry at you for really stupid reasons, and then they'll call an admin, and you'll sit there for 20 minutes, and then Save the Dolphins will come in and get pissed off at the other person, and just continue on the game. So you can save a lot of time if you have the tabs open on another page, and then if you get into a dispute with your opponent, you can just link them the page. So that's one tip. Now this is the most basic build. I'll also show you my current build, which I have in real life, and this one's been a bit of a fun one. This is a Seal of Orichalcos Skill Drain Remove Brainwashing build. It's a really odd build, but it works phenomenally. There's a lot of silly little combos in here that I like, and I'll explain the logic between half of the card choices here. You'll also notice I don't have any side or extra deck. I usually don't play matches, so ignore that. But anyway, the point of this deck is Skill Drain, which stops the negative effects of all of the monsters, excluding Grinder Golem because it's a summon criteria. It also allows Beast King Barbaros to be bumped up to 3,000. Card D gets underneath Skill Drain, and I'm going to be entirely honest, I'm not sure how Battle Fader works in regards to Skill Drain, but no one's called me out on it yet, so unless someone wants to correct me on this, I'm pretty sure its effect happens even if Skill Drain's on the field. But regardless, I'll get into how this deck actually works. This deck, you may notice 2 Terraformings and Seal of Orichalcos. Seal of Orichalcos is the heart of this particular build. With this particular build, Seal of Orichalcos and Remove Brainwashing Skill Drain basically means that you're giving yourself easily 15,000 attack in a single turn if you decide to pummel your opponent into the ground. It also negates the negative effects of Lava Golem and Volcanic Queen, but it also, on top of that, stops a lot of opponents' plays. Being able to stop your opponent's plays because you have skill drain up and they can't do anything is a phenomenal thing to do. Now, there's 2 terraformings despite the fact that there's only 1 Seal of Orichalcos, and Seal of Orichalcos can only be used once in a game. You may be wondering why. That's consistency. That is literally the only reason for it, is consistency. If you did draw terraforming, because this is such a spell and trap heavy deck that relies on skill drain and remove brainwashing, chances are once your opponent figures out what you're up to, they'll be trying to hit your spells and traps as soon as possible. So even if you did draw these, just setting them can be hilarious sometimes, because your opponent will MST them off or scrap dragon them off and realize that they're hitting absolutely nothing. They're hitting a dead terraforming. So there's a fun use of them. The Pot of Dualities are in there for the exact same reason. Battle Faders are in there for the exact same reason. But there's also a little thing with Seal of Orichalcos and Grinder Golem that I need to point out, which is actually a really fun little side effect which I discovered when I first started playing this build, and it works really well. Seal of Orichalcos means that while you control 2 or more face-up attack position monsters, your opponent cannot target the monsters with your opponent cannot target your monsters with the lowest attack for an attack. Since the Grinder Golem summons out 2 0 attack tokens to your side of the field, with Seal of Orichalcos, it boosts them up to 2 500 attack tokens, but on top of that, because you now have 2 monsters in face-up attack position, your opponent cannot target either of them for an attack. Which means with just Seal of Orichalcos and Grinder Golem, you can create an attack lock, and your opponent cannot attack you unless they blow up one of the tokens or they destroy Seal of Orichalcos. And that is actually a lot harder to get around than it sounds. A lot of people have a lot of trouble getting around that, and it can be really funny because if you get into a bind, you can just drop a Grinder Golem and a Seal of Orichalcos, and if you really want to be like doubly sure, you can switch a Battle Fader into attack position or drop another Grinder Golem, in which case you have 4 tokens on the field now with 500 attack, and your opponent can't attack any of them. So that's basically the only difference between this build and the other build. This build works really well. I actually really do like this build. I do want to find a way to fit Santa Claus in here, but because of skill drain, Santa Claus's usability has dropped quite significantly. And because of Seal of Orichalcos, once again, you can't even exceed Santa Claus with Volcanic Queen, so that's another side effect. But this is another build you can try out once you're feeling a bit more confident with the regular Remove Brainwashing build. It's a fun build. This is my favorite build. I've been toying around with this a lot in real life and on Dueling Network, and it's worked great for me. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you do try this deck. It's a really fun deck, but I also hope that you keep in mind to keep the rulings nearby, because people will get mad at you. People will get really, really mad, especially when you're playing against people who are net decking meta decks, because they have a tendency to get really pissy when they think that the best deck at the moment is being beaten by some random person playing Lava Golem. Lava Golem has a tendency to stir some of the biggest crap storms ever. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please thumbs up. I'm not a Yugi tuber, unfortunately, if you're watching this for Yu-Gi-Oh content, but I do Let's Plays, and occasionally I will do kind of useful stuff. I've been playing Hearthstone a lot, so if you want to watch more of that kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe. Thanks for watching.